Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me, as always...
Shut up, Grady! Eddie of Edwards' Truth.
I wish you, like modified it for the Cherry Picker to just say, shut up, Zach!
But then it's not a quote from the movie, but it's always like in spirit, you know?
Yeah.
Like
it's like you meant it. It was directed at me, but, you know, for...
Absolutely.
For
I'm opening the podcast by telling you to shut up angrily. That's the way we do business. No, I love that moment, but we'll talk more about that in a minute.
We'll talk more about it, because this entire podcast is dedicated to A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Or is it just 2?
The gay one.
We've got the Freddy shirts. Mine is less.
I've got rainbow claws. Rainbow claw marks.
Freddy's Revenge. Released November 1st, 1985. And we'll get to this later, because I'm just like, what revenge? But do you want to start with a premise? Because I feel like I have so much to talk about here. So much.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just do that. Mm-hmm. Do you have any requests for how I should read it? You want an English accent this time?
No, you're fine. But just do whatever feels right for you.
Do a Springwood accent. I'll just movie trailer voice. We'll try it. A new family moves into Nancy Thompson's old house at 1428 Elm Street, where sensitive teenage boy Jesse Walsh and a sweet new friend Lisa Weber get hold of Nancy's diary, detailing her ordeal 5 years earlier, which all seem too familiar to Jesse, who is tormented nightly by a scarred ghoul named Freddy Krueger, imploring Jesse to kill for him. Is this all coincidence, or is Jesse doomed to surrender to A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2? Freddy's Revenge? I tried. You do a better job. I don't know.
I thought you were just gonna go for just say Freddy's Revenge, or not even as a question.
No, because there's usually a title card that Andre edits. Thank you, Andre. At the end of it all with the title, and it says A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Cooking, Freddy's Revenge. You know.
Yeah, so. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I just wanted to say revenge, because that is a question. Revenge. Who? This to me is like when people say that Kirby's coming back to be the killer in the new Scream movie because she's getting revenge, and it's just like, on who?
Kirby's revenge.
Who?
Yeah, I know.
Who's
right?
Freddy getting revenge on in this movie? Everyone's the first Nightmare on Elm Street was his revenge.
Yeah. And then when it's declared in the next sequel that the last of the Elm Street children,
spoilers.
I would call. Spoilers. I would call that.
I haven't seen it yet.
How many years has it been?
Well, what is the time? Well, the timeline here, because this is taking place in 1989. Because at some point they say 5 years since the house has been empty or something like that. Yeah,
since the events. But I do think the title is kind of, the questionable nature of the title, Freddy's Revenge, the fact that it's not really him taking revenge on any one person. I think it perfectly encapsulates the spirit with which this sequel was crafted, which is very little thought, a lot of rushed production, pre-production, post-production, what have you.
Speaking of movies or sequels that come out very quickly, this came out less than a year. Because I'm just looking at the dates, because the original Nightmare was sometime in November, like the middle of November '84. This came out November 1st. So, I mean, like Scream 1 to 2 of just kind of like that, like 11-month gap. Like we kind of got the same thing happening here too.
Yeah, but in a very different way. Like I know that from watching Never Sleep Again, the Elm Street Legacy, like 4-hour documentary, maybe 4+ hour.
No, thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I own it.
It's real.
But yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. But from watching the second, they talk about the second movie in depth in a great way. Yeah. But Bob Shea had produced the first movie, and even though it was wildly successful, they were so indebted, and he had to keep the production going on that movie, had to like sell shares of it and give it away, so that by the time all the receipts came from the box office for the first movie, he saw very little money, if any at all. But what he had was the grounds for a sequel, at least, and for it to do almost as well. Typically sequels did, I think, about anywhere between 50 to 75% the business of the original movie. And he thought, if I can do that, great. And he ended up actually surpassing it by, I think, about $2 million. So he wanted to get a movie going that he could actually make some money off of. So happy for him. Yeah, right. And that I actually think about Bob Shea more than anyone else when I think about like the engine that gets this movie going. Yeah. Because I don't know. He seems like he seemed like a rather meddlesome, but passionate producer. I mean, you have to be in order to piss Wes Craven off to the point where he will tell you to sit in a corner and mind your damn business. Yeah. And he just scurries off and sits there silently and stops telling people what to do. I don't know what his relationship was like with Jack Shoulder, the director of this film. But I know Jack was working really, really hard. He said he had a nervous breakdown before the movie started, when he was in pre-production, and it just continued into production. He never really kind of like could wrap his head around the task before him. So what we're watching is a lot of footage shot by a man running scared, and that's just the director. So I don't know. That's Freddy's revenge for you.
Well, you have a much better relationship with this franchise than I do, because I mean, I've seen all of these movies, but I haven't seen them in a long time. So watching this, I mean, even the last time when we did the first Elm Street movie, which was back in the summer of 2022, it had been a while since I'd seen that movie. So and I had seen it more recently than I had seen Nightmare 2 with this podcast viewing. So I'm really experiencing all of these movies over for the first time, because I have very little relationship to them. This is actually, of the big three, like the Halloween, Friday, Nightmare, I think I mentioned this before, this is my least favorite of the three franchises. And I think a reason for that is the lack of consistency. And this entry, probably more so than the others, I feel like this is probably the furthest removed from the franchise, because the only character that's really coming back is Freddy, and I would argue that just given the mythology change in this, and just like how the rules were kind of broken, it's not even the same Freddy Krueger. So when I look at the Halloween movies, even though that's a clusterfuck of everything, like even Halloween 3, I could say that there's consistency with that, because the first three movies are John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, all those lovely people working, and then when after that, Mustafa Cad, and you had Danielle Harris, and still Donald Pleasance, but there's always been like a consistent through line, even like up to Resurrection, where like Jamie Lee Curtis appears in that for the brief time that we see her, and then even like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I would argue that like Jason is the most consistent character through that, and even when he's not in
Friday the 13th, you said Nightmare on Elm Street.
I'm sorry, thank you. And even when he's not in A New Beginning, we're still following Tommy. Right. So there's always like this connective tissue, and I think like this franchise, from what I remember, it finds its footing at varying points, but then it like loses it again and keeps coming back to it. So because of that disjointedness, this is why A Nightmare on Elm Street is not my favorite or second favorite of the three.
Interesting, because I mean, it's an interesting vantage point to have because it's not my experience. I don't feel like A Nightmare on Elm Street as a franchise loses its way any more or less than Friday the 13th or Halloween. And in fact, I'd say probably the weakest of the franchise as far as like my own personal ranking. Yeah. I think I'd still put over the weakest of the Halloween or Friday the 13th franchise for me. Yeah. I think I'd watch the worst, with the exception of the reboot, which is a movie 2010
remake.
Yeah, but that said, I've seen that movie like 6 or 7 times. I have never enjoyed myself, but I've done that horror movie fan thing of like, oh, it's streaming on this service I'm subscribed to. I don't really care what I watch tonight. I'm going to fall asleep anyway, and I know it's not going to scare me. I'll give it another shot and see how much I can get through. And then I'm laying in bed watching it on my laptop, and then I end up seeing the whole thing, and then I'm just really, really in a bad mood, and I have to watch something funny just to get me, in a happier place so I can get to sleep.
Your soul.
Yeah, because it's just a dirty movie. I don't enjoy that.
So what do you how do you feel about Nightmare 2?
I have very complicated emotions about this movie because I think when I was younger I towed the line, kind of like the public line that a lot of people had, which was I thought it pretty much sucked. I just felt like it was everything that Wes Craven says about it. I agreed with, and he knew that just from seeing it on the page. Like they gave him, he wasn't interested in doing the sequel. Yeah. But
before he even saw the script, he already wasn't.
Oh, before he even saw the script,
he didn't envision this as a franchise. It was just a one and done.
Right. Like that, the ending of the first one where it's like an open door where Freddy is still existing and everything like that. That is not Wes Craven's movie. That is Bob Shea's movie. Yes,
that was the real ending.
In Wes Craven's movie, she just waves and drives off, and then the mother Marge just sees like the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, and that is it. Yeah. That was the original ending. So it was a way to give Bob something to produce in the future. So he was like, I don't want to do this. And Bob Shea was like, well, here, just read a script. Like, I want to know what you think. And he read it and he says, I think it's terrible. And I have a lot of notes if you want them. And he said, well, we just want to get something going. So, so Bob Shea is that bitch, that person is just like,
the moral of the story for Wes Craven is just like, don't work with producers named Bob, which clearly did not work out so well.
Oh God. But I would work with a Shea over a Weinstein any day.
Oh,
but,
for sure, yeah.
Because I have a lot of affection for Bob Shea. But no, I remember for a long time, and then I started recognizing the symbolism in it because I think I started to see the interviews around the late '90s when the big box set of the DVDs came out, and there was the Nightmare Encyclopedia, which I still have somewhere here. Yeah, this old dinosaur. Oh. This is the last disc of the set. It's the only one that I need because the rest of them are just the movies. But there were all of these interviews talking about the entire saga up to that point. So it was everything except for the remake and for Freddy vs. Jason, which hadn't been released yet. Mm-hmm. And because I think the box set dropped in '99, I want to say.
I remember that. I could never find it, but it's... Yeah, I wanted it.
I found it at Amoeba when it was like, it says like right here, like out of print from box set, like stickers where I bought it. And I was like, oh, it's on its own. But anyway, if you can't see what I'm doing, I'm talking about the DVD, folks. But the last DVD in the
DVD? What's that?
The DVD. The Nightmare Series Encyclopedia is what it's called. But and there was a really intense, like, kind of hour or so documentary where they chronicle the making of the first film and talk a little bit about what followed. But then there's all of these clips that go in depth about the sequels, and I got to see people talking about the second movie and got to hear about the turmoil behind the scenes. And Jack Shoulder, the director, I saw him for the first time in an interview, and on that disc, he's very exasperated, trying to explain where he came from, almost like defending his position, because he's just kind of like, I mean, look at Jason. Like, nobody cares about like who the characters are or what the rules are. It's just what is he going to kill him with and how. And we knew that the Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, had some things, but we didn't know what exactly they were. So. And then as the movies went on, there were some big, you know, tenets that like kind of defined the franchise, but we didn't know that at that time. So he's just like imploring, like, please don't blame me for this bad movie. Kind of like Joel Schumacher did for Batman and Robin, you know, like where he basically apologized to the public. You know, I didn't mean to offend anyone. And that was interesting, I thought. And then hearing like Rachel Talalay talk about like, how for the first time about how nobody on set ever spoke about any kind of homoeroticism in the movie or even in the script. She remembered reading the script, and what she responded to was the heat and the oppression and the melting of things, like that the family seemed to be trapped in this house that was this internal inferno. Yeah. And that's what, so she focused on the hellishscape, like I guess the subliminal hellishscape as opposed to the homoeroticism. And then when she saw the movie, she actually watched it before the interview and said, "Oh my gosh, it's shockingly homoerotic."
Well,
and it, yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because, and we're going to talk more about, because we watched this and we also watched Scream Queen, the Shudder documentary, because there's a lot to talk about with that as well, and Mark Patton. And mostly like what I got out of that documentary, because it was almost like there was a lot of like blame assigning and just like, you know, who's at fault here. And my takeaway from like the final thing is like, it wasn't anyone's fault per se. It was just a complete lack of communication on everyone's part. Yeah. And you saying that there was really nobody was talking about it, that pretty much confirms to me that that's what happened. Is that, you know, there were people that understood what it was, but nobody, probably because it was an uncomfortable subject, weren't discussing it with other people. So there was these preconceived notions within the production of just like what needed to be done or what we wanted to do. And it turned out to be a literal nightmare for everyone involved in so many different ways.
Yeah, particularly Mark Patton. I think he I think at the end of the day he suffered the most because his was the name or the image, like, you know, as Jesse, like that was getting like dragged through the mud and raked over the coals on the internet in particular, which they go into in the documentary. Yeah. But at the time of the 1999 box set release, Mark Patton was still in hiding. Like nobody knew where he was. So there was nobody to speak from that, because he spoke about like a few instances he had where he knew what was going on and he could recognize someone else. I don't remember who it was who pulled him aside when they were shooting the scene, the confrontation between Freddy and Jesse.
It was the makeup artist. Or not the makeup artist, but just like the makeup person for like, you know, just like I gotta fix
the makeup person
for
him. Yeah. Touch-ups and like powder and stuff. Yeah. And the makeup artist pulled him aside and said, don't let him put that blade in your mouth because it looks like you're going down on him. Yeah. And so that's pretty blatant, but Mark Patton wasn't there to tell that story in 1999. We had to wait for Scream Queen to hear that.
Well, I mean,
story.
And also the internet did not exist in 1985, so like his leaving the show business wasn't because of that. It was after the fact that he, you know, went online and discovered the backlash and like just to him in particular, but I think
in his own career he was
but I think from what I understand of just like in 1985 his career just kind of fizzled out after that role, because just like in terms of like his managers and on the business side of things, they looked at him and they're just like, look, you're a good actor and you can carry a movie, but you are not like the leading man material. Like you can be a character actor, but you're like essentially you're too gay. to like play anything else. And I think that really affected him because, you know, it's like the kind of criticism that, especially when you're starting it and you know, your dream is to be a big star, to hear something like that and just, you're like, that's very deflating. And I think that kind of caused him, as well as like other things that were happening in his personal life, to just kind of shut down and retreat and then disappear, where he like went off to Mexico and was off the grid for so many years. Apparently they had to hire a private investigator to find, like the documentary of the Never Sleep Again crew hired a private investigator to locate him to take part in that documentary. That's how hidden he was.
Have you seen on the documentary, on the Blu-ray and on the DVD, there's bonus features, and one of the bonus features is the reunion of just Kim Myers, who plays Lisa in this movie, and Mark Patton for the first time ever since they shot the movie. She hadn't seen him in so many years.
I mean,
Did you see this?
I put because I bought it. I found it in a store years and years ago, like probably 10 years ago. And I didn't realize it was 4 hours long. I put it on and it was like probably about the 3-hour mark. And I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm losing steam here. So I kept it on, but I was doing other things. So I don't know. It's hard to retain that much from it. You don't. Really, no, because if I had known, I would have like, you know, taken measured increments. Of
watch it in episode form. Yeah, like watch the first movie and then watch. Yeah. And then, you know, go do something and then come back and watch the second movie part and everything. But it's off the documentary, though. One of the bonus features, it's just the two of them embracing each other. And they don't break the embrace for like a very long time. You just hear these like cooing noises from her. She's like, oh. And he's just holding on to her and everything. And then she's just like, oh my gosh, you look so good. Like, she must have been so worried about him. And you can tell they had a great working relationship. You know, like they obviously were just so incredibly enthused to get to share that much screen time with each other, because anytime you share that much screen time with someone, it's a big bonus if you get along and if you absolutely do love each other. Then it just becomes kind of like heaven, and you know, and you get freedom, you get trust, you get so many things, so many blessings, you know, when you're working. And I think you can feel it when they're working with each other, that you're watching two actors who trust each other. But so they're holding each other like in this bonus content, and she just asked him, where have you been? He was just like, oh, I've been in Mexico. And she's like, what Mexico? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, because she realizes they're on camera, but all they want to do is talk. Yeah. They're completely like excluding, like, you know, the camera, like we can't see their faces and everything like that, because they're too into each other. It was just, I don't know, it's just adorable. It's just this precious little moment. I wish we could have seen more of them interacting in Scream Queen. But you bringing up Mark Patton as an actor, like that's something I wanted to talk about too, because that's another thing that actually to this day kind of prevents me from enjoying this movie. I can watch it and I really, really actually appreciate it the most as it opens up, because I feel like it opens up with a lot of strengths. I love, first of all, I think the score is top notch. Christopher Young did an incredible job. Okay, so can we just count, like, how many is this for him now? Because we got Hellraiser. Oh God,
the first two Hellraisers. At least we've got Urban Legend. We've got The Grudge. Sinister was another one that he did.
Sinister was one. The Conjuring? Did he go?
He's been doing the Conjuring movies,
and a bunch of other things that aren't genre. Oh, it did. They I would say appropriated, but they full on stole his music for the monster Mahakal, the Indian derivative version of Freddy.
Oh, okay.
I've seen it. It's like 2.5 hours long. It's rough, but it's stolen most of its song cues that aren't, originating in India. Most of their score cues, I should say, are stolen from Christopher Young. Like, they don't steal a lot of the original movie's score. It's mostly like the whales.
Yeah, because the interesting thing about Young's score here, which, you know, it's great, but this is the one movie in the franchise that doesn't have that Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 which is like the signature like Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger. That kind of I felt that like missing. Like it definitely hindered this movie for me because I agree like the opening because I do love that swelling scores. You know, the bus is coming down and the title card comes up. That's all great. I love the opening sequence, and I feel like that's kind of where, because I didn't really say, you know, what I felt about this movie because it's not, I don't love it. But I agree with everything that Wes Craven says because this does not feel like Nightmare on Elm Street to me. There's not, we spoke about this in the last movie podcast, or you specifically, you know, just blew my mind when you're just like, where do the dreams begin and end? You know, where can we say is like, that when does Nancy like actually go to bed? Like is the whole movie a dream? You know, like, you know, things like that. And none of that is present here, other than that opening. I just there's no ambiguity of just like when is he awake or when is he sleeping, because it's all just awake. It's all just like Freddy and like body horror and coming out of him. There's no point in the movie, like even by the end when the friend is like, great party last night. It's just like, didn't a bunch of kids die there? Like, what is
exactly?
It's so fucking stupid. I just hate it. By the way, the friend, I don't even know her name because she's so unimportant.
Carrie,
yeah.
Yes.
She was on Melrose Place. She was Jane's boss in the early fucking seasons. She was like the awful woman who was like, remember when Sydney came in, Jane's sister? Yeah. For people who don't know, not Sydney Prescott. And
people who don't know who Jane is.
Jane, well, everyone knows. Jane's got the famous like bob haircut, but just like she was awful. She was an awful employer, and there's the whole. She was really nice to Sydney, and just like, maybe I'll let you wear my belt if you go buy me some donuts or something. There's just like stupid shit like that. I immediately like recognized her.
Yeah, well, that you would not have recognized her if she hadn't been in this movie. She said in, I think it was in the Never Sleep Again interview, that she had a ticket to fly to New York because things were just not mapping out for her in LA. And then she got this job and she completed it and she made enough money to stay a little bit longer. Then she got another job and another job and another job. And she never left Hollywood after that. She ended up never moving to New York. And I'm just like, that's pretty fucking cool. Yeah. Like, that I want that story. But it's, oh God, there's so much to address. Okay. But, so I started to talk about, Mark Patton's performance. And one of the things that I think is both a strength and kind of a detriment to my enjoyment of this movie is how good Mark Patton is. Because unfortunately, this is another thing, you talk about a tonal dissonance from the first movie. Jesse is a very different character than Nancy Thompson. Nancy Thompson starts off as kind of, you're like, you know, your all-American girl, literal girl who could live next door and you would believe it. Wes said he wanted somebody who exuded a feeling of someone who could be like the babysitter or something like that, or the girlfriend of your sister, you know, and she's very much that. Jesse, from the moment he's introduced, even though it's Dream Jesse or Nightmare Jesse, is depicted in an almost 1980s caricature-ish nerd way, because he's got everything but the glasses, you know, like he's got the greasy hair,
it's like
got
comb sideways,
weird kind of like clammy complexion. The rest of the time he doesn't look quite so shiny, even though he sweats through most of this movie. And he's got the pocket pen protector. That was a huge, like, you know, token of your nerd in the 1980s, your nerd depiction. And you're kind of led to believe, oh my God, who is this kid? And then it never comes up again, but it's almost like, is this Jesse's perception of himself? Is this Jack Shoulder's introduction? Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was going to suggest. It's just that this being like really the only concrete like nightmare in the whole movie that we know for sure. I just kind of, that's how I interpreted it, as just like that's his perception of himself, because when we see him next, like after he wakes up and he goes downstairs and we meet the family and he's
Yeah.
like breakfast, he's got his hair like spiked up. And we never see him like this again in the movie either. Like he's like just the way he looks in this initial breakfast scene, because every other time like his hair's not like, it doesn't have any product in it. It's not styled. It just kind of got that like shaggy kind of like wisp to it for the rest of the movie. So it's just like, it's like we're introduced to him in the dream, like on the bus. And like you said, he's got the comb sideways, nerd look. And then we got like the kind of like skater boy. I don't know what he was supposed to be in that initial breakfast scene. And then like the rest of the movie, which is like more just like the shy, sensitive boy who's, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I remember Jack Shoulder saying that he did get a slightly, and this was in the 1990 box set interview. In 1999, sorry, that there was a slightly effeminate quality to to Mark Patton as an actor that he responded to. There was a sensitivity and a draw that made him think he could be kind of like the final girl of this movie. But arguably the direction the movie takes, Jessie is not the final girl. Lisa is clearly the final girl because she is the reason Jessie gets saved. And she's also the one who's got the most final girl qualities as she navigates through the movie, because she's the one who does the research. She's the one who has Jessie drive her out to the boiler room and wants him to like search his feelings, you know, like just to see if anything. And he's the cynic. He's the one who's going, I feel like a jerk. She's like, just concentrate, you know, like she's the one with the open mind, and he's the one who's denying it and pushing it away.
I mean, that's something that I definitely noticed for sure, because she has just as much agency in this as he does, if not more, because of you know how the movie ends up at the climax. And it's, I mean, we may as well just like get into the whole like muck in the mire, as you say, of like the whole homoerotic subtext and all that, because first of all, I don't see it as subtext. I think that it's very blatant, which is one reason why I don't appreciate this movie in that regard. Like I know like a lot of people are and I think that like part of its resurgence and like renaissance is because of just like this growing popularity in the LGBT community. And because like I said, like I think that this movie is just kind of blah, just like as a slasher, like it there's nothing special about it to me. So I find it interesting that it's become so popular and so beloved. I don't remember if it's my least favorite. I'll let you know when we eventually get through all of the movies. Yeah. But aside from it not like feeling like subtext, I don't like the message that it gives, because to me it's more of just like, and I know that the writer, like just based on what I saw in the Scream Queen documentary, when Mark Patton eventually went and met him, which was so awkward, but when they sat down and started to talk about it, and Mark brought up these things that the writer, I forget his name, you'll have to tell me.
David Cheskin is his name.
Cheskin said in past interviews is that he jokingly said it was a homophobic movie, and it was something that they would show in gay conversion camps, because like essentially the story is that here's the character of Jessie, who's clearly dealing with, you know, being in the closet and, you know, having these homophobic or homosexual feelings and tendencies, and the girl, you know, coming through and talking him out of it, and just basically being like, no, this is not who you are. That like who we are is who you are. And that's eventually what saves him in the end. So I don't find it to be subtext, and I don't find the message to be one that I like or appreciate. And actually it was someone on my Patreon, I think it was Daniel Saturn, who wrote, you know, you said when you did the Tenebrae podcast that was the gayest horror movie ever. But I'll disagree and say that Freddy's Revenge is the gayest horror movie ever. And I'm going to stick to my guns and say, for me, Tenebrae is still much gayer than Freddy's Revenge, because even through the subtext, which I'll just say is text here, it's very one dimensional, of just like, it just very like narrow focused of like an aspect of queerness. Because for me, like, queerness is not just, you know, where you're, you know, hitching your post to, just in terms of like body parts. It covers a broad range of interests and everything. And I think that, for, like, just based on when we did the Tenebrae podcast, everything like in that movie, just like based on imagery and fashion and the aesthetic of it all, that is like what sparks my like queer interest and just like, you know, makes me happy. Just in terms of like what I navigate through these movies and just find like, oh, that's really gay. I like that. You know, just things that like most straight audiences would watch and they wouldn't really think about it in a certain way. But, you know, like gay audiences would see this and just be like, oh, wow, like, you know, I really like this, probably because I'm gay. And I don't get that here, because this movie doesn't make me happy. It doesn't make me feel any joy for the characters in the end. Like, if anything, I don't relate to Jesse on as much as I relate to someone like Nancy, who I think is a much better avatar for overcoming that kind of that strife that you know, one would deal with it when you're looking at these movies through like a gay coded lens.
Right. And well, that's all fair. Everything that you've said, like, I would never deny, you know, your perspective and your experience with this movie and with, you know, these characters. So that is all, I'm taking all of that in. Yeah. This is not going to be an argument of you're wrong, Zach Sherry, and here's why. But what I will say, because a lot occurred to me, there's a lot of things that I agree with you about this movie. There's some other things that I, you know, king of headcanon or queen of headcanon that I am. There are things that help me see this movie and experience it and maybe enjoy it a little bit, but more than you. But I do have to say, it struck me as odd, I think, only in the last decade or so, it started to occur to me by seeing like interviews, like repeated interviews with Heather Langenkamp discussing Nancy. I think it was in Eli Roth's History of Horror, might be the first place I saw it. Another streaming off Shudder. And they talked about slashers. And I even put this on my Instagram story at the time because it so struck me, because that's my final girl. And she's sitting there saying, at the release of the movie, the first people who were fans of mine and fans of Nancy's were gay men and young gay boys. And they would come to me and they would tell me almost across the board that they felt like Nancy was this avatar for them to fight against, you know, whatever it was that was oppressing them, whatever it was that was caging them, that whatever it was that was trying to change them and keep, you know, make them into something that they weren't. And they were, you know, they were just being strong against it, and they weren't going to be controlled. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like, so it's not just me. It's not just like a very personal thing and a link that I have with her because I have that link with her. It's probably because I'm also gay. And I found comfort in that. And then I thought, oh, and then there's this second movie, which is called The Gay Nightmare. You know, what is it Mark Patton said? The 12-year-old boys call it the Homo Nightmare, and on the internet. And I thought, oh, I don't find strength from it the way I do from the first movie. I wonder why that is. And every time I watch that movie, it's because I'm watching Jesse suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer. Mm-hmm. He gets some moments where he gets to kind of like act on his instincts and toward his inclinations, where I'm kind of like, that's what I would be doing. Where like he's confronted with this wonderfully open, sweet girl who is all she wants to do is help him and listen to him and everything like that. But she can't, because where he really wants to be is with Grady. So he leaves her party after he embarrasses himself in a sexual, stumble block with Lisa, runs to Grady's bedroom, wakes him up by clamping his hand over his mouth and telling him, "Shh, I need you to watch me sleep. There's something that's trying to get inside me," and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And Grady does. And essentially what Jesse is doing in that moment is what Nancy did with Glenn, but in a very much more hectic, much more harried, and arguably, if you're watching the movie in this fashion, maybe campier way. Because Nancy, there's a very legitimate, kind of like warrior stance she's taking. She's already kind of like become the master of her own path. Whereas
Glenn,
Jesse
you shit.
Exactly, but Jesse doesn't get that moment. See, that's the thing. Nancy gets to ask Glenn to follow her, and they both have the same outcome. Both Grady and Glenn fall asleep, and both Nancy and Jesse suffer because of it, but Nancy gets to smack the shit out of him and say, "You shit!" But poor Jesse has to watch Grady clawed to death. And not only watch him, he has to become the avatar for it. He has to like shapeshift. And I actually really do enjoy that transformation sequence where Freddy is like busting out of Jesse's body with all the practical effects and the eyeball. And Kevin Yeager. And it was also
Child's
directed
Play
by,
1.
I always forget. And I forgot. It was, Child's Play 1. But it was also directed by... I can't remember his name. Oh, go. I want to look it up because I don't want to forget his name. I can't ever remember his name. Mark Shostrom, who actually choreographed, like the trajectory of that scene, and the shots and everything like that. That is largely like kind of like his animal there. Yeah. So good for him. Good for Kevin Yeager. Kevin Yeager mostly did Freddy, I know for sure. He's mostly talked about the hooked nose and the high cheekbones and the amber eyes.
He had a very interesting look. Like, I think it was based on Wicked Witch of the West. Is it the West?
Yes. Yeah. The male witch. That's what he wanted him to be. Yeah. But so Jesse has to suffer, and where Nancy gets to, hide her boyfriend and live to see another day, and just see the feather fall, and she's continuing on. Jesse is in despair, crying like, "You son of a bitch! You can't!"
So I'm just thinking, like, how's he gonna get out of this one? Like it's his hands are covered in blood. Like it's like
in blood.
Yeah, there's no way.
And there's even a line and a gesture, if we didn't already see it, for him to go, "There's blood on my hands," to Lisa when he's disclosing to her everything. And then for some reason, this is just poor screenwriting, for some reason, Lisa starts denying, like, "No, Jesse, this isn't happening. He doesn't even exist." He was like, "Look at me! I almost killed my sister!" And I mean, a lot of raving and a lot of
But I mean, like,
angst.
if that's what the queerness is just pointing towards, it's just like the denial and the like the female counterpart denial, and just like, you're better than that, you can get through this. I do like that scene, like the Grady murder. I thought it was effective how the knives come through the door on the other side when the parents are there. By the way, the dad is the Ferris Bueller's father.
Yes,
I noticed that. I was like, where does he look so familiar from? But
that was the role that Bob Shea wanted.
Yeah, I think I was reading
Jack
that.
Jack Shoulder told him, I'm going to need a real actor for that. And apparently that really...
We're going to put you in the game. Was he the bartender?
Yeah. And then like Bob Shea went with his daughters. He had like grade school daughters that he took to like the pleasure chest in West Hollywood to like look at leather. And they're like, because it's a costume, he's thinking it's like a Halloween costume, and they're looking at things going, "This leather would look good on you, Papa." And the proprietor had to ask him to excuse his daughters and have them wait in the car while he makes his purchase, because it's just not appropriate. And I think I concur. Anyway, you were going to say. Sorry.
What was I going to say? Well, yeah, just getting back to Heather, because I guess they never even approached her about returning.
No.
For the movie, which, I mean, the whole basis of this story. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I'm not saying that, like, Freddy resurrecting himself through a person and coming out into the real world is not a bad idea. Because we saw in the original movie that, part of the rules is that he can come out into the real world if someone is holding on to him when they wake up.
Sure.
So in like the evolution of the franchise, at some point, whether that's like the 4th, 5th, or 6th movie, that could have been a thing. But it's almost like they like jumped way ahead. I don't want to say this movie is how do you say it? Just like too like soon for its time, but
ahead of the curve.
I don't know why I'm having a brain fart moment there, but yeah, it's just like it was just ahead of its time, because I don't know if this concept ever would have worked, but this is definitely one where. In 1985, when the franchises were really just kind of doing, like Friday the 13th was obviously keeping it simple and just regurgitating the same thing over, and that was successful for Paramount, that it would have seemed that like the most logical thing to do was, even if you're not bringing back Nancy, just stick to the rules, stick to what and just keep doing that. And then eventually, later on down the line, maybe then you can tell this story. So it was very ambitious. And I think that, even when they were conceived it and just like had like the main character is going to be a male, regardless of it not being Nancy, like a lot of people were questioning that, like, is that a good idea? And I don't know if they were questioning it because of any sort of like gay overtones or subtext in the script. I think it was more just like, horror movies, of that time were just like, it's about the final girl. Like, that's what people want to see. That's what they're coming here for. And I think it was just the wrong choice. It was like the wrong time and the wrong choice. And what this kind of like I was actually thinking about, did you see the movie Bros? It just came out last year.
I still haven't seen it. I have it on. I have a Peacock and it's streaming there, and I still haven't streamed it.
It's fine, but it's it essentially it's a gay movie made for straight people.
That's what I've heard. That's the conceit. Yeah.
And the reason why that is because the story is inherently gay. Like, it's just like it's not about these two people and whatever they're dealing with in their life. Like, what they're dealing with is like gay stuff. So just like the queerness of the story is front and central. That's what it's about. So it's like, it's nice in a way that it's just like, here's a mainstream way that, all audiences can see this in a movie that's, in theaters that's going to be watched by millions of people. But it's not, not to say that it's not an accurate depiction of queer life, but it's just the concept of it that just like gay stories can only be about gay things. And it's almost like that's how I feel about this movie. It's just like it's considered the gay nightmare movie because it's like about like a character who's essentially struggling with his identity, and then the girl has to come along and save him in the end. And that's why I think that characters like Nancy work better as avatars for that, because that's you can use that as subtext. You can identify the queerness and the gay codedness in characters like that much more successfully when it's done subtly rather than just like really sloppily and like
accidentally
as it is here. So I don't that's another reason why I just like I don't like it's a gay movie in more so just by accident. Not even because I mean like he definitely did it on purpose, but I think just like it was an accident that nobody really communicated again, that it all kind of happened the way that it did.
And that the people who were in control, who were trying to infuse maybe more gay stuff consciously, like the set dresser who put probe in Jesse's, bedroom closet as kind of like a sight gag for people who, would be watching the movie and know, like, oh, there's a joke for you, things like that. But I do have to say, you're making me remember, because this was also kind of my inaugural slasher movie, because I watched Halloween at my mother's behest, like saying like, oh, you like Freddy, you should watch Halloween, that's kind of like Freddy, and you know it's not, but but it's own
like
thing.
Roger
and I
Ebert,
loved it, and I was,
Siskel and Ebert just being like, it's all the same.
yeah,
Thumbs
but
down.
it wasn't. It scared the shit out of me in a way. Like, even though I had nightmares about Freddy, I never, to this day, I haven't had a nightmare about Michael Myers. But it terrified me in a way that the nightmare movies, I was always eerily, gleefully kind of enchanted and entranced by the Nightmare on Elm Street movies as a kid. Like, I mean, single digits grade school, you know? But Halloween, it was like, turn it off and don't return to it until I can handle it, and that's what I did. But I remember I was introduced to it because there was a kid who we carpooled with who was all about Freddy when I was in the 3rd grade. He was in 3rd grade too. He was in my class, named James, and James had like no parameters. He was a child of divorce and lived predominantly with his father, and his father just didn't give a shit, so he let him watch whatever he wanted, you know, tits and ass, cursing, violence, whatever you want, son. And, you know, you're gonna learn about it one way or the other. So that's how I ended up seeing Dream Warriors and the first Nightmare on Elm Street. I remember I asked him about the second movie at some point, and he was like, oh, you don't want to watch that, that's gay. And I remember not really knowing what that meant, except knowing, oh, that's derogatory. Okay, I guess it's, I don't know what that means. But I mean, if a 7-year-old child, I mean, not that he's not consuming like other things of the 80s. Like, I mean, in Scream Queen, they literally show a montage of the F word, and I don't mean fuck, being like repeated over and over again, like how gays were kind of like denigrated over and over again in the mainstream Hollywood media and everything like that. And I don't mean like in interviews per se, but we probably didn't do well there either. But I mean like in the content, like in movies and TV shows. And so I don't know. It's just interesting that like a kid perceived it, communicated it to me, and for a long time I didn't watch the movie because I knew it was gay and I knew gay was bad. That's all I knew. It didn't process anymore. I couldn't even articulate at the time that had happened. It's just a memory, a very vague, you know, dismissible, like a dismissible moment of the day at that time. And now when I watch it, I like I said, like I think there are some things. I think the opening is probably one of the strongest things for me. Like I really appreciate things like the motif of this like relative safety of suburbia, kind of like laying waste into the barren remoteness of a desert and everything like that. I like the fact that it's introducing the concept already of Jesse behind these girls who are cowering. So he's already the movie is already disposing of this traditionally male role as the protector or the defender of females and everything like that. And I again, like I feel like maybe they were even making 2 movies that they didn't know, because on one hand, I love the idea of kind of like upturning the system and making a movie like in the 80s, like now even just like upturning it sounds like a dated term, like upturning like the male is the protector and the female is the weak, needs to be saved, and like if now we'll make the female the defender. Okay, it's like I'll watch that movie, but how about if everybody can defend themselves? You know, how about if everybody gets an opportunity to kind of like step up to the plate and, you know, find out a little bit more about themselves and strengthen themselves. But anyway, at the time, I would have really liked to have seen a movie where the girl was the hero and the boy was like the damsel in distress. That would have been cool. I think the reason it doesn't kind of thread the needle for me as far as like a satisfying movie experience is because I really, as much as I would love to see that, I have seen that. What I've seen less of are gay heroes. So if Jesse could have kind of like showed up for himself, and if there could have been a little bit more mindfulness, even like as you say it, like the way they made the movie, like, well, what story are we telling? We're saying that like this guy can't fight his own battles, so he leans on his friends. Okay, that's kind of cool, and actually developed into a much better movie subsequently with Dream Warriors.
I mean,
that's another thing. There's no team. There's just a duo.
No, totally.
And
like,
one
I
is
think
strong and one is weak.
If the movie was essentially just Jesse as a gay character, and you know, he could have been struggling with that or whatever, but it's just like, as long as like he knew, and this is something, and the audience knew, and it was just, that was the connection between him and the audience, or, you know, even if that was the smallest amount of it, just as long as it was established, like, this is a gay character, but then this is happening to him, like everything with Freddy, and that's completely separate from anything gay. Like, that's what movies, like, if like, that's inclusivity. Like, that's when you look at, you know, when people talk about like the Scream franchise, and just like, okay, well, every killer is, you know, just like, before it was just like all the survivors were white, and now it's like, okay, but now like all of the killers are white too, and like none of the killers are gay. Well, yeah, probably at this point, but you know, it's like certain things, like if you want to be inclusive, you have to make the killers different ethnicities. You have to make them different sexual orientations, because that's inclusivity, is like having it run the gamut. You can't just have these people be the heroes and think that's, because that's essentially virtue signaling, just to be like, oh, like, look what we did here. So had Jesse just been a gay character, like, this would have been a gay movie, but it also would have been a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, where the main character just happened to be a gay teenage boy. And I think
if they ever do, if they ever do make that Nightmare on Elm Street requel, I hope there's a gay character.
I mean, that's why we're seeing, and this is why I love the Child's Play franchise so much more, because like, we're doing that, you know. We'll save that for more of that talk for next week, but I mean, like, it's happening now. We're finally there in like 2000 and the 2020s, where this is a thing. And it feels so normal. Like, it just feels so like effortless at this point. And it's just like, it's so sad that it couldn't have been back then, because there could have been so much progress in the mid 80s. And there could have been like that movie. I mean, I know that people love it, and I don't want to take that away from them, but like, I don't like this movie. Like, I'm not in love with it. I don't think it's a terrible movie. I think there's qualities to it, but had it been that story, had Jesse been this gay character, and like just have the same situation like that Nancy had in that movie, and for his queer identity to have not been a factor in why, or just like, you know, how he was fighting with Freddy, or just in that way of just like him hiding it, or, you know, just however bullshit reason that they figure out in the end, I think this movie would have been so much more successful. That would have been ahead of the curve.
Well, also, it's interesting because, I mean, you bringing up Chucky and everything like that, I mean, another franchise that originated in the 80s. If we look at that first movie, I love that first movie, and we both, you know, already discussed that with the camp and, you know, gay sensibility and everything, you know, being introduced very, very early. And even, you know, like an affectionate little boy kissing his doll and saying, "I love to hug you," you know, and all that stuff. All of that stuff, more of it. And we got more of it. But the thing is, I think it also helps when the creators of the content, you know, the screenwriter and the director, like Don Mancini, are also free to be out and free to be themselves and free to write characters without making a statement, without having to make it, you know, like, here's a gay character and that is all they are. No, they have problems, they make mistakes, they have, you know, miscommunications, they have troubles, they have weaknesses, and they have opportunities to overcome those weaknesses. Like that, as long as we talked about this with women in Last Night in Soho, and Martha Plimpton talking about how the strong woman thing, and how I don't care if women are strong or if they're self-righteous or anything like that, just characters, give me interesting characters. And I feel the same way about gays, but with gays, I mean, I don't even know how many strong gays are in movies either. How many strong LGBTQ characters are in movies that people talk about?
And if they are, they're usually it's very ambiguous, like as to what. I mean, it's you can probably look at them and be like, oh yeah, it's totally like a gay character, or a lesbian character, and they're like usually the tough ones that either sacrifice themselves or just like go out in a blaze of glory. Yeah. But you're absolutely
There's always
right.
the inescapable flaw, like the one thing that just kind of like goes, this would be really, really great if, because what was it? There was,
sorry, the writer, what's his name again?
Oh, David Cheskin.
Cheskin, yeah. Because I did, like, from what he was saying, he was just like, he knew what he was doing. He's just like, oh yeah, like, that. But I wasn't sure if he was gay himself. It didn't seem like he was.
No.
Do you know for sure?
I feel like it would have come up in a documentary about homosexuality. The fact that Mark Patton is talking about all of these people, surrounded by all of these straight people, so all of the gayness kind of like gets thrown on him. I think there would have been a different dialogue between the two of them at the end of that documentary if they were both gay. I didn't perceive David.
And I mean, and again, this is why like communication would have been good. I mean, of course, this is the 80s. Like, things were so much different then. And of course, Mark was in the closet, and he wasn't gonna like come out and just be like, well, I think you should do this differently. And he wasn't sure about certain things. But I know that other actors who were in contention, like one prominent name for the role of Jesse was Brad Pitt. And I'm sure that, I mean, and this is where like some accountability has to come on for all parts, like including Mark Patton, that I think that if Brad Pitt was playing Jesse in this movie and was doing the dance and like closing the drawer with his ass, or whatever it was, like I'm sure that he would have been able to play that part. I mean, like I'm not agreeing in a sense with like Mark's managers just being like, this is what you have to do. Like, you don't have this leading man quality. But I think that, someone of Brad Pitt's caliber probably could have done, navigated through this movie and not been pigeonholed the same way that Mark was, just by the fact of like who he is, and, just like how it's even like just showed within his aura of just like everything, that it was like this is a gay character, or like a coded, not even coded, but just like blatantly gay character, and him being gay, he just connected with it in a certain way that made it just translate like even gayer on the screen. So
by and large, the camera reveals truth. That's why when you can fool people into believing you're someone else, it's so impressive. But it's also impressive when people bare themselves and like reveal something that they have coming through them.
And
but
that's why
I do watch this movie as though JC is gay.
I
do,
no, totally, like me too. And I think that's also why like the director needs to be accountable as well, because like in this documentary, like I mostly enjoyed the documentary, but it was kind of cringy in certain parts, because he, like when Mark Patton like got to that thing where like the cast was meeting and like the director was there and he was explaining it.
Yes.
And I think there were like, he was like very much like, I know why Cheskin isn't here, because he didn't want to, like, just assuming these things, like we didn't know for sure if that was the reason, but it was just
right.
Obviously Mark had a vendetta, and he like, I mean, not even a vendetta, but he wanted to say his truth, and he wanted
anger.
Yeah, he like, he needed to deal with it. And there was like a segment, I don't know what this was, it was like the next day, where he sat down with Jack Shoulder, the director, and in just like the most, like the cringiest part where Jack is just like, you need to let this go. Like you're so focused on this, like it's just like, I'm not saying that like there wasn't truth to what he was saying, or just like that it probably was coming from a good place, like he meant well, but like to not understand someone's essentially like the plight that they've been dealing with for the last what was it, like 25 years at this point, of just like something that like greatly affected Mark's life, and for him to just be like, you got to get over it. Just like, it's just like, that is not what you say to a person like that.
No.
But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know why Mark there I am, like, just mixing the two up
Yeah.
because they're so
Yeah.
linked together for me. But I don't know why Mark wasn't looking at Jack Shoulder to have any onus for this as well, because he directed it. And we talked about this before, where a writer can write a script, but at the end of the day, it's the director's vision that makes it come to life. And whatever the queerness was in the Freddy's Revenge script was realized by Jack Shoulder during the production, or even like lack thereof by the fact that he would just kind of delegate direction to his like assistant, because I think he didn't even want to do the pool scene because he thought it was so ridiculous that he actually got someone else to direct it. So it was like a mishandling of that. So it was almost just like, no, like that's why it's like everyone is at fault. You can't just like blame one person. And I feel like the documentary definitely, I think like it gave Cheskin an opportunity to speak to what he did. And I don't think that he because he said like, none of this came from like a hateful place or anything. I think it just like it's just how it happened, and I didn't think about as like for a lot of people, like you and I, if we do something and it affects someone else, we're not intentionally doing that, but it happens. And I actually like that the way like the two of them like ended up, because it was just like this very nice just like realization of just like I'm glad that he was able to like get it off his chest. I almost like got more like catharsis from the Scream Queen documentary than I did from it's almost like the watching Freddy's Revenge like fueled me. It just like, oh, I don't like this, but then seeing that, it's like a good companion piece because it just like it's
a great double feature. Yes, ideal,
absolutely.
Scream Queen is the movie that needed to happen to help Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah.
It only boosts Freddy's Revenge because watching Scream Queen on its own is amazing. Like the first time I watched it, I didn't watch Freddy's Revenge right before it, but I had, I have that movie in my brain.
Oh, absolutely.
So I knew everything. I knew all the references they were making. I got everything. I was just like, oh yeah, that was okay. And then I even wept. I remember like being incredibly moved and feeling incredibly protective of Mark Patton and his anger, because I know what it is to have long housed anger, and then somebody starts to try and speak to it, and it's like, you don't know. Like when I love that you brought up Jack Shoulder, because I would call it even beyond cringe. I started to get angry at Jack. I started to go like, no, you do not tell someone when they have been carrying something this long. You don't tell them that they need to get over it. But what I appreciate about that moment is from Jack Shoulder in particular, I get from watching both the movie and the documentary that Jack Shoulder is a guy who might fumble things a lot, but ultimately he's a guy who means well, who's doing the best he can as a filmmaker, as a friend, as a confidant, whatever. It may not come across in the most seamless, compassionate, or insightful way, but ultimately, if you sit with it, you might get something out of it. Yeah. And I think it's a credit to Mark Patton that he didn't become defensive after Jack Shoulder told him that. He looked thought, really why hurt. Am I?
He was almost like at a loss. He's just like, what do I say to that? And it just made me go back to just thinking of like poor Mark. He's just been told like all his life like no, you got to do this, you need to get over that, sort of thing, because I think that like that's just his personality of just like, someone will criticize him and he's not the type to get defensive or fight back. He'll just kind of like take that in and like allow it to eat away at him. So I just but I agree. Also, I don't think no, like Jack Shoulder, like definitely like he seems like someone that fumbled. You mentioned earlier in the podcast that he was having a nervous breakdown as they went into production. Yeah. I would argue he's probably still been having that same nervous breakdown like 37 years later. Or
he seems like a guy who struggles a great deal. Like, but but thankfully, I think Mark Patton has enough strength of character as a human being, and to hear something like that, not even necessarily a criticism, but just a comment like that, an outside comment, and ask himself, well, why am I still carrying this? And that's what led to the conversation with David Cheskin, which might not have happened. He might not have pursued him if he hadn't thought, maybe I do need to sit with David, and maybe I even need to know if he would be willing to sit with me. And he does say, I never would have thought this would have happened. I never would have expected David to sit with me and ask these questions. I don't think David knew exactly what he was getting into either. But the fact that because also everything that we're talking about is like the strength of an apology and what that can do. Just to hear, all he wanted to hear, and I think if Jack Shoulder would have apologized, that might have eased something in Mark Patton as well. But like he said at the end of the documentary, nobody ever apologized for any of it. So he kind of put it all on the head of David Cheskin and held him responsible for a lot of other things beyond the movie. Like you're now every other guy who uses the F word at me. Yeah. You're every other guy. You know, you're every other guy who makes an AIDS joke, or you're like you're even the one who like created AIDS, like and everything like that. Like so
I'm almost thinking just because of like Jack Shoulder's just like the perceived personality of just seeing him in these interviews and just sit down with him, that he is that kind of person that I don't want to say like anything bad, but just like he seems like somebody that fumbles through situations like this, that maybe that's like just the perception that Mark and like the rest of the cast have had of him, of just seeing that like probably a lot of this is his fault. And the assignment of blame should be placed on Jack Shoulder, but it's almost because it's just like he doesn't seem like competent enough to have done that they're probably just like, well, he doesn't know any better, like sort of thing, and that's why it all kind of got pushed onto Cheskin.
Maybe, because also there's something about Jack Shoulder that reminds me not of my father, but because my father, he had an ability to, while he was alive, to condense things. Like I would sit there, you know how, I don't know if you've noticed, I talk
really
a great deal. And I've always been like this, particularly with my family, because, there's no reason not to. And I remember... particularly like the last 4 years of my father's life, that was after I came out. And so I could really just talk about anything with him. And I'd be on these long diatribes, just like, excavating and just, I don't want to say dumping all over him, but just, going on and on and on and on. Yeah. And after it was all over, I just kind of like pause and just look to him like, do you have anything to say back to me? And he would say like one sentence. And it would just distill everything into like, well, it sounds like this, so why don't you try this? Yeah. And it would just make all the sense in the world. And I'd be like, oh, of course that's the thing. And, after I spent like an hour going, I don't know what to do. So there was clarity and there was direction that I got from my father. I miss it a great deal. That said, Jack Shoulder kind of reminds me of a lot of my friends' fathers who... have the same intent as my father, but maybe not the deft tongue. Yeah. They don't have the ability to just kind of like condense it all into like a simple truth and send you all back off into the world. That's a gift.
Not everyone is meant to be a parent. And it's that's just the unfortunate reality of the world. And I think, like, I couldn't even imagine myself as a parent. Like that would be interesting for sure. I don't know if just like
with my cat.
I don't know if like I would have a good time, or that my child or children would enjoy that. It would be interesting, but it's just like, you like, I think a lot of us will do that, where it's just like we look at other people raising their children or other people's parents and judge them a lot. But it's just like, how would we be in that same situation? And this might be a good opportunity to segue into the parents of Jesse, because
oh gosh,
what the fuck is... I mean, I'm looking at
Mr. and Mrs. Walsh.
Well, from the first movie, because you had more of a problem with John Saxon's Lieutenant Donald Thompson than I did, but I think that was our cherry picker. Was I chose Glenn's dad, the one across the street, who's just like, you just gotta show these kids who's boss. Remember, he just like, Glenn can't come to the phone right now, like hangs up, and then just like, actually let's leave it off the hook, just like shit like that. And I thought that was bad. Too. And then we have Jesse's parents,
Krueger and Hope Lang. Yeah. Krueger, he is a B-movie staple. He's amazing.
I love that name.
Yes.
Krueger.
He's great.
Yeah. But not as the father though.
Well, this is the thing. Yes, he's a gruff, barking, like at times voluntarily ignorant person. Mm-hmm. Like all of that. I mean, he can still do it too. He can do that, Jesse. Like barking Jesse's name at him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the suspicion that when the lovebirds destroy each other, or the one lovebird destroys the other, and then flits around the room and explodes, and he's like, "You did it, did you? You got some explosives. You got a damn cherry bomb. That's what you did. You can't talk to me that way." All of that, that's a shitty ass father. The saving grace for me with Jesse's father though is when Jesse is walking the streets naked. And the cops bring him home wrapped in a navy blanket or something. I don't know. And you can see him asking his son, like, because obviously there's a problem. Yeah. So he's like, and he runs his fingers through his hair kind of, and like it touches his face and just says, "What are you taking, son?" Yeah. And there's like patience and compassion and like an open door for the only time in the movie, but it's there
because
I feel like
in the next
affection.
Scene. Yeah, and the next scene, he's tightening the bars on the windows, and the mom is like, "That boy needs a lot of therapy." Like she's just like, "We need to get him to someone like right away." And he's like, "All that boy needs is a kick in the ass or something like that." And it's just like,
"Oh God,
you're not even consistent as a parent." But yeah, he was awful. I did love Jesse's little dramatic this is what I liked is when he's like, you're not going anywhere, you have to clean your room, and Jesse's like stomping up the stairs, making each step loud just to show his anger. So gay. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is when they're in the kitchen and Jesse is like, "Did you know that someone was murdered in the house across the street when you bought this, and that the girl who lived here went crazy?" That's another thing. They're kind of establishing this continuity with Nancy off screen, that she officially went crazy. So just so is she in the mental hospital? I mean, I'll have to get to Dream Warriors to remember what her kind of arc was between the films.
Okay.
But yeah, and then they're just the mom killed herself in the living room. It wasn't the bedroom, but whatever. Who knows? Because who knows? It might have been the front door,
Yeah.
But yeah, and they're just you didn't say that. And then of course the girl was just like, "I don't like this conversation," or whatever she says as she's eating her Fu Manchus or whatever.
Oh God, with the little red nails that she puts on her hand that haunt Jesse. After
I liked that. That. Well, earlier on, the first breakfast scene.
You like the breakfast scenes. You like.
I mean, you know how I feel. I mean, the Halloween breakfast scenes. They're hit or miss. I mean, I think that I'll take any of them except for the Rob Zombie ones, but.
Right.
That's for anyone just tuning in or doesn't remember
and shit.
The Halloween franchise. Every breakfast scene in every one of those movies is so dysfunctional. I think the first one that we get is in Halloween 4 of "Do you want an oinker for a daughter?" or whatever the fuck it was. But then of course there's the one in Halloween 6 with the just another day at the Strode house, whatever, when he slaps her.
Oh God, yeah.
And then all that shit with Josh Hartnett and Jamie Lee Curtis and the that's a awkward conversation. I don't think there's the Rob Zombie ones had multiple dysfunctional breakfast scenes. of just like,
oh yeah,
especially the first, like
in
the
Myers
bagel,
house,
the bagel
in the Strode
thing,
house, finger banging the bagel, yeah,
the skull fuck,
but
and then of course in the sequel, wasn't there when Lori has her shit conniption of like just
right.
one day at a time.
It's just one of those rants.
And then sorry, and just because I'm a completionist, I got peanut butter on my penis. But yeah, there's always some weird shit of just like, it's just like some dysfunctional thing of just like families, and I don't know, like I at least like I liked this one because it did like the nails, like the little Fu Manchu things, like it was interesting because at least it had that bridge of continuity to show us like, okay, here's Jesse, he's being haunted in his dreams by Freddy. It's like, it's a very simple, device to use and just show, because it was like a very quick reaction that he had to it, and then it was just like move on to the next scene, and there's like the horrors of high school and him also. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here, but just like the progression of like whatever the relationship was between Jesse and Grady, of just like how they went from like he was like bullying him to then they're like best friends who were sitting next to each other at lunch, because this guy had like no other friends to sit with, as probably because of the way he eats and talks as he's chewing.
I didn't perceive it that way. I always feel like yes, he's kind of, I don't know about bullying, but I mean, they do have that rough and tumble while they're at the, at the game, because they probably haven't had shared many words prior to that game. And Grady's like shaking his behind and everything like that before he hits the ball and everything. Also, as a kid, like huge crush on Robert Russler in Vamp. That was my first exposure to him. That was one of the things that made me know I was gay. And then by the time I got to this movie, I was just kind of like, And then by the time I was just like, I know I want to do what she's doing in every aspect of that movie. But I want the Keith Haring paint on my body. Anyway, we'll do that.
I'll have what she's having.
Exactly, I will. But but then I got to this movie because I think I'd seen him in Weird Science also, and I feel like
that's what he did
more
before
movie
this,
I'm probably forgetting. Yeah. But I had seen Weird Science before I'd seen this movie also. And even though he was like, the bully in that one, like he was like, like a funny bully and a cute bully, like Robert Downey Jr. was. They were twin, dreamy bullies together in that movie. But in this one, by the time I got to it when I was, I think probably, 14, I remember I was just kind of like, oh, it's him. It's that guy that Grace Jones mounted, etc. in Vamp. Oh my God. And there was always a dream guy that I could pluck out of like any of the Nightmare movies where I'm like, that's the one I'd be after. And he was the one in this movie. So I don't know. Now when I watch it, I kind of see that Grady is also, if not latently homosexual, just closeted and interested in Jesse, totally into him. But in a bro kind of way, like, because that's all he can handle. But there's so many clues throughout the movie that I glom onto, because he's like, what is your problem with me? And he's just kind of like, no problem, dude. I'm just jerking your chain or whatever he says. And then they're kind of like pals. And then what I love is that scene in the classroom where Jesse gets the boa constrictor in the dream, because in the dream the head is much larger, and then when he wakes up and the actual boa constrictor is on him, all of a sudden the boa constrictor has this tiny little adorable head, and it's it's just cute.
And what was with the teacher, like what is with teachers in like these 80s movies as well? Yeah, but he was just like, it was like, it's your fault, and like, dude, this is your classroom, and you let the fucking snake get out, and then you yelled at the
this
kid
is not a toy kind of thing. But the point is, we start on that teacher in the scene, and there's this dolly shot that's like pulling back, and as it pulls back, you notice that you see Grady in the foreground, and he turns and he's noticing Jesse, and he's kind of like watching him the way you would look at your crush in school. So I'm like, oh, Grady's got a crush. And because Jesse isn't looking at him. And then, but it's also this weird flirty thing where, like, after he gets not, I don't know about berated, but, you know, gets chastised, I guess, you know, snakes are not toys kind of attitude taken away from him. Grady's laughing at him, and Jesse does that kind of like stifled laughter, flipping him off thing. Yeah. And Grady laughs full voice, like this is the nature of their relationship.
I mean, I got that too, but I just think it's a lot of like poor character writing. Because it's not just with him, because I'd even argue that Lisa, because like she's kind of presented it like she's like the queen bee, like she's like the most popular girl at school. She's sorry, she's throwing the big pool party that all the cool kids are going to, and I don't
even when her parents play lame records.
Yeah. I love how like the lights turn off and all the kids are like, all right, let's turn up the like they're not gonna hear that. But of course, like the mom, she's got a cool mom. The mom's just like, I'll blow you if you just, you know, ignore the kids. But no, I didn't like from Lisa. I didn't get that vibe from her. Like she didn't seem like the type. Like she did seem more like the girl next door type, like the Nancy. Whereas like this social status that she's been given in this movie just like felt more like the I'm just trying to think, like, just since I'm not as familiar with the Nightmare movies right now, we'll just say like a Linda from Halloween, of just like, oh well, you can totally come over to my house, I'm gonna have that party and all the kids are gonna be there, you know, like that. I would not expect that character to be having that party. So I just feel like there was all these contrivances that were put in the screenplay for these characters, because Cheskin, what is it, David Cheskin?
Yes.
So it's just like, oh well, we need X, Y, and Z to happen. So, you know, that she's going to be the popular kid that, you know, like everyone goes over for the pool party. Or maybe it's just like she has the pool. So it's just like Lisa Simpson, you know, like that episode.
Well, I actually thought of Lisa as more of, not Lisa Simpson, but Lisa, I said her last name earlier. I don't remember what it is. Lisa Weber. Yeah. I always thought of Lisa Weber actually more of kind of like a Liz Purr, you know, because, you know, she's like the Princess Di of Springwood High, you know, like maybe she rules with kindness, you know, maybe that's just, maybe after, you know, all the Springwood slasher bullshit and everything like that, you know, nice is in 1989, but, because, you know, crazy people used to live here, but, like, I mean, yeah, maybe she's just like somebody who everybody likes, because I could see that. I could definitely see her being a girl who everybody likes, and who, if anybody's mean to them, then you're an asshole kind of thing. Like maybe and also it's a small town. Like maybe it's just not, you know, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's just not developed enough to have a resident bitch.
I'm mostly, well, I was getting bitchier vibes from the friend who we were talking about, whatever her name is, Jane's boss.
Carrie.
But even she
and
was
that's why Carrie can't get a date. That's why she's getting rejected by everybody except for the guy with no lines at the pool party.
Yeah. But even she wasn't like, you know, she had those like bitchy qualities, probably because she was the brunette. But you know, she it's true though. It's true. But even she was like, because she like the guy swims over. He's like, "Are you coming back in?" She's like, "I'm busy, like talking to my friend."
Right.
So it's just like everyone, you know, typically if this was a like the prototypical Nightmare on Elm Street, it would be like, here's your group of kids, and everyone's kind of getting picked off. But just because Jesse's sort of the focal point here, and then of course to a certain extent, Lisa as well, that like all these other characters are an afterthought, you know, or just like they're there, they do the thing that they need to, but it kind of robs us of a lot of like great like horror movie death set pieces, I find, because I mean we do get the shower, like the gym locker room thing, which I mean like I don't need to, like that's not a top tenner for me.
No, it's not. I mean, it's a highlight in that it's its significance lies in its kind of strangeness, and it's brash homoeroticism and everything. Although I don't find it particularly erotic, but I don't know, as a torture. I guess if it's non-consensual, it's probably torture. But I know a lot of people who, if they had to go that way, would probably be like, sure. If you're gonna kill me by like tying me up and
we're gonna go through the entire roster
place and
of Nightmare on Elm Street deaths and just be like, which one would you prefer?
And they pick Coach Schneider's. I mean, it's funny. But even the fact it's kind of common knowledge among the students that like he goes to like, okay, whatever. I think Grady calls it a queer joint or something like that, but. Or leather, but it's a kind of a quasi leather bar, but also has kind of like a punk vibe. It's supposed to be, I guess, a gay bar, but there are women and they're not just talking to women. Like, it seems to be largely integrated. So I don't know what is going on at Dawn's place. I also love the fact that the neighborhood gay bar gay/punk/leather bar in Springwood is called Dawn's Place. You know, it has a clear sign outside of it.
I want to see what like the equivalent would be in Haddonfield.
Oh god.
They would all be Brooklynese in there as well.
But just to get back to Schneider's kill scene, again, this is something I noticed this particular screening that I really appreciated, and I feel like people have alluded to it, but I really noticed it like in just the I don't know, the props that are used and the set decoration or set design. I don't know which category it falls into, and maybe some of these things were in the script, but with Coach Schneider, I just thought like you take these token symbols of perceived masculinity, you know, in sports, like, you know, these balls and these other things, and you just attack the most clearly defined representative of the gay community for Jesse, our protagonist, up until that point. This is like kind of like his understanding, I guess, of what it means to be gay, and he just takes all these symbols of oppression and directs them at this man and kills him that way with Freddy kind of in the driver's seat. But I feel like Freddy is using Jesse's angst to kill Schneider. And that was another thing I missed in this movie. Because Freddy is so bent on having Jesse kill for him, he doesn't really bother haunting anyone else's nightmares. Like, nobody else is having nightmares in this movie but Jesse. So no wonder he's going crazy. He's completely alone. And the body count doesn't even consist of like his friend group. Like, all the kids who die basically die. Like, there's Grady, and that we see the toll that it takes on him. But that's still the night of the pool party. It's all in that same night. Everything else is just kind of like these weird, nightmarish, you know, like benders that Jesse goes on night after night. That's the basic horror component for the lion's share of this movie, for the bulk of it. So that, I think that's a criticism I have. But
well,
I mean,
if they had honed in on that more and actually had him going out and like killing people, like what if he, like every day, like they comes down to the breakfast table and there's like a new thing in the paper, just like another murder found, at, you know, here and there. But I'm playing with more of a thing that like Jesse was sleepwalking, because I mean, like, that was something that like when the police brought him back, I'm like, what is the, like, how are they going to explain that, or like how would he explain it to them, or what excuse would the parents use? Obviously he's like, what are you taking? But if they're just sort of like, if they said, sorry, like he sleepwalks, or if there was something established earlier on that, you know, that's kind of how it happened. Because I don't think that I mean, again, I have to watch all these movies, but the only instance of sleepwalking I remember is in New Nightmare, when Heather is speaking of her son, little Miko Hughes, and she's just to the nurse, she's just like, he sleepwalks, or whatever she says. You know, she's furious because they let him walk out of the hospital after they've sedated him.
Okay. No, there's another example I can think of immediately of the
puppet
Yeah.
That one, yeah, okay.
There's that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if I think about it more, maybe there's some others. But all
I'm saying is I think that it
would have been interesting.
It could have been that idea could have been fleshed out more, because I think that
totally
probably what I'm thinking, like David Cheskin when he was writing the script, he's like, oh, this is going to be like the coup d'etat of my work, of just like this pool party where Freddy bursts out. It's like this is like the big scene in the movie, and it's just like it's awful. And that was like what everything was like building up towards, was this fucking pool party. It was not good.
Well, the coolest thing that happens in it is just we get that shot with the flames behind Freddy, and just goes, "You are all my children now." It has no precedent set for it, and nothing that follows really pays it off. But I mean, there are some things, again, kitschy things that I appreciate. Like, I think I laugh every time Freddy is in the house, and I think it's right after Jesse's like, "Oh no, it's happening again," after I have blood on my hands and all that, and he's like, "Oh no, he's coming back, I can't run, come on Jesse, you can find him, I can't, you have to run," and I think she goes off, and she can't leave because the doors are locked or something, and she comes back, and Freddy is fully formed, because he's transformed again, and the first thing Freddy does is like there's this decorative plate that's like among the bric-a-brac, and he just knocks it over, like, "That's what I think of your home decor, bitch."
He's like a cat.
I know.
Like a thing there, just like, he put his hand out, like he didn't even do anything yet, and Lisa's just like, don't, that's really expensive, or or even like that episode of Buffy where that demon breaks into the house, and he's like, "Slayer, you cost me," and bashes that lamp, and she says, "I cost you? That was a designer lamp, you mook."
Exactly.
We needed something like that, because he even goes outside right after Freddy, and he's doing the same. He there's all these people that he could just like kill right there, but instead he goes over to the table and just knocks off all of the plates and shit.
Yeah.
Like, he's just more of a menace than a killer in this. Although I will say that in the scene of like Grady's murder, I think that's probably his most frightening, when like after it happens, and then you see him in the mirror, and Robert Englund does like that amazing laughter, which is that's what I remember. I'm like, oh, this is Freddy. Like, this is where I feel Freddy the most in this movie,
because he's laughing at someone's pain. And I agree with you, that is Freddy. But I mean, again, there are other things that are interesting to me that Robert Englund did, with like the grabbing of like Jesse, and the playing with tracing his mouth and everything like that. And they talked about that in the documentary, and I've seen him talk about that in other platforms as well. That make me really happy, because that's something new and interesting, that he's playing with Jesse and has this kind of physical freedom with him that he did not have with Nancy. Everything that he did with Nancy seemed to be about disgusting her and fighting her, like the most physical I can remember them getting, there's two instances, is the tongue coming out of the phone, and of course that one shot where it looks like he's got her by her hair, by the back of her neck. She's like laying down, I think, after they've fallen off the bed, and he's over her, and he's just kind of like pulling her up toward him, and she's just kind of reluctantly like lifting up before she fights back.
Well, there's also the bathtub, because he pulls her.
Oh, there's that too. Actually, that's true. Yeah, the big hand. But everything about that suggests invasiveness and alluding to the kind of like sexual deviancy of him, whereas with Jesse it seems much more like a seduction.
Well, because with Nancy it's there's more of a struggle, and I think that it's sudden, like it just like it catches her off guard, whereas you're totally right to say there's seductive qualities to his interactions with Jesse, because it's slow and played out very like methodically, of just like how he, like Nancy doesn't give Freddy enough of an opportunity to like, it's almost like the whole, it's like the killer monologuing at the end of Scream, where just like, I'm going to stand here now as you just like explain everything to me and not do anything. Like, we don't get that with Nancy. Like, Freddy might do something, but then she'll like jump to the right or to the left or whatever, and then he'll chase after her. Like she's always moving. I feel like with Jesse, he's just like kind of like, what is going on here, and just kind of like in that, what is going, but like will stand there and just like allow him to, like, he doesn't fight back in that way.
No, it's and again that dates back to like my criticism, because another thing is that Nancy seemed to gain strength. There was definite like loss and trauma when as she was losing her friends and everything like that, but she also seemed to become more determined. There's that shot I always love, the moment where she's at the funeral. Forget which one, and but it's another funeral, and she's just sitting there, and it's just close up of her face is like the priest is just going on with platitudes, and she's just got this, she's looking down and she just kind of looks up, not into the camera, but like so the camera can see her eyes, and there's age in those eyes. She's grown, she's
looks
growing
20
up.
years old.
She does.
I think it was Rod's funeral, because I don't believe that Tina's was ever shown, and then Glenn's was obviously on the final night. So
right. So the fact that he actually has his energy depleted by the deaths, even though there's Schneider and then there's Grady, but and then there's something where he seems to be threatening his sister and everything like that, but it doesn't, again, even that doesn't feel tonally on point with like the Freddy that was introduced in the first movie. But watching Jesse disintegrate, I say the only kind of like saving grace of it is the melodrama, that I have blood on my hands, and the like, he owns me and all of that. Because the fact that Lisa even reads a passage to Jesse from Nancy's journal about how she defeated him, and he still can't do it. I'm like, what? That's a criticism I have for David Cheskin. That's one thing I would just be kind of like, okay, so did you see the first movie? Like, do you understand?
Clearly not. If the entire genesis of like the rules just changed, but
right,
yeah. Well, I don't have a lot more to say, but I just want to say, because like I like the opening. I like the whole thing with the school bus, and like that's a great set piece, and just like even how it like culminates in like them teetering on that, whatever you would call that landform thing, which is like that helix. Like that's all fun. I love how Robert Englund is like playing himself as he's the bus driver, but just like out of the makeup and all that, which I guess is his first like non-Freddy appearance, or non like burnt makeup appearance in the franchise. But there's another part that I like too, just like in the vein of that kind of art design. Because when Lisa goes to the factory at the end, it kind of like the camera pulls out and you see this, it's just like on this ledge of this abyss. It's almost like this castle that she's walking into. And I like that, because that felt like this is Nightmare on Elm Street. This is like going into the nightmare realm, even though there's no sleep. There's no passage into sleep. None of it makes any sense. But I mean, it looked good. No. So, I mean, other than that,
I do the red and green lighting, atmospherically in the boiler room. Like, I was like, okay, spiritually, I get it. Like, the two harshest colors, and we're manifesting them. She's like inside, kind of like the Freddy experience, as it were. But it looks a lot more while Lisa's making her way through it, like she's making her way through a line for a Freddy roller coaster, because it doesn't look like the boiler room that Nancy and Tina were terrified in, that Nancy's like, fuck you, and like, burned her own forearm. It just doesn't feel the same. It feels more funhousey, and it feels less threatening and everything. I will say I have a favorite shot, I guess. It's not a sequence, but it's a moment in the movie. But I also have a least favorite sequence. And my least favorite sequence of the movie is everything that happens in the boiler room. I that's when I check out. That's when I get up. I literally did get up to like feed my cat and to check my laundry and all of that, because it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just, by that point, I'm just kind of like, okay, then Lisa defeats him. She kisses him because I guess she reads fairy tales and she thinks if she kisses the beast, then the prince will, come out, which is exactly what ends up happening. So good for her. But even the hellhounds that greet her.
Oh,
when she
what
gets
the
there,
fuck was that? I forgot about them. Probably good that I forgot about them. What the fuck? What were those?
Every time I see a horrible idea, and every time I see them, I just think they're wearing Happy Death Day masks. The baby.
No, at least that's cute. I don't know what that. It was like they had human faces.
Yeah. Well, maybe that had like been melted down some, but it's like, things that have been treated. But yeah, everything about it, like I just wait for the end sequence because at least that's kind of fun. But
it's
but
very anticlimactic. That whole ending.
Well, because this is also the thing, because it's preceded by a lot of Lisa interacting with Freddy Jesse. Like it's Freddy perceivedly, but there's still some Jesse, or maybe Freddy manipulating some Jesse to hurt her, which again works at the party when he's like, "I love you, Lisa," and she's like, "Oh." She's going.
That
through
was
her
like
angsty
the
too.
moment in the first one with like Tina, or like when Freddy was just like, "Help," or just had Tina's face or whatever that was.
Help.
Save me from Freddy.
Freddy. Yeah, I guess. But I mean, also I had to wonder, because there's two instances where he says, "I love you, Lisa." And the first one is Jesse, the one that hurts her. Then the second one is in a Freddy voice where he's like, "I love you, Lisa." And she has this expression on her face. It's the exact same expression that I have, because she's almost kind of like, "Wait, what's going on?" Does this killer love me too, or what? And then he starts, like, I don't know, stroking her hair, and she's just kind of like waiting it out, like, what's going on? Wait, what are you doing to me right now? And I'm like, yeah, what am I watching and what's happening? That said, some of the stronger things, just because I know we're wrapping it up. It's on par with Muffin in Friday the 13th Part 2, when we get the dog coming up to the boots and then we cut to the hot dog links, sizzling.
I love that.
It's after Jesse wakes up covered in sweat, adjusts himself, and we immediately cut to 2 fried eggs, like very, very close together. And I just think, oh, those are his balls, So I appreciated that. A little humor in the beginning always helps. And I thought, like, again, with Coach Schneider getting attacked by, like, the balls and everything like that, I noticed, like, Jesse's room is adorned with, like, sports memorabilia, if you can call it that. Like, he has that lamp that melts later, that's got the baseball cap on it. It's made of baseballs.
It kind of, like,
very
melts into a
boyish.
Phallic.
Yeah, and so does the candle. So does a candle. But he's also got a bowling ball. I was counting them every time we go in his bedroom. I noticed he had a bowling ball. He had the tennis racket that he never plays with. That's like behind his bed. He's got like Adidas and Nike shoe boxes. Sports brands. Yeah. And he's got trophies galore. He's got all of these trophies. We never see him play a sport. Except for, I guess, baseball.
I think
but not on a team.
But I mean, I think
you're not going to get a trophy.
So wait, this is a positive or a negative for you?
I mean, it's interesting because again, it's introducing him as kind of like this character who seemed to spend his boyhood in this typical American fashion, and this movie is all about him kind of shedding.
I
like
think that this is
skin.
I mean, I don't find it interesting at all. I chalk this up to Wes Craven versus not Wes Craven, because Wes Craven, if he was directing this and like the art director came in, if they had already just like, okay, we got Jesse's room set up. If for whatever reason they didn't consult with Wes beforehand and just went ahead and did it anyway, and Wes went in there and just like, what the fuck is this room? He would never say that, but he'd be like, and it's like, is this Jesse? Like it's no,
yeah, right.
Like,
right.
He would have a pretty good idea, or just like people that would put that care into what is Jesse's identity? What would he have in his room? And paint a more realistic picture of, you know, what we
Okay.
might see in there, rather than this
I
like
understand.
rather than this like mishmash of everything. What? Okay.
No,
what
but
do you understand?
I understand that. I'm not saying like Jack Shoulder's a genius and he, you know, oversaw all of this. I'm just saying if it's a happy accident, it works as far as like kind of getting its hooks in me to get me to the next moment. Like I'm just kind of like, why would Jesse have all of that? Like, I mean, if I take the movie at face value and start to mine it as a piece of art, which some people would argue it's more and some people would argue it's less, but I'm trying to watch it with a critical eye, not just critiquing it but also examining it and asking, oh, that's there, why would that be there, and giving it a little bit more credit maybe than it's due, but but it occurred to me. So because also there's another thing I noticed for the first time: the framed portraits or pictures throughout the common areas. Like we go follow Jesse through the corridor at one point, and the only items on the wall are all of these framed portraits of other kind of like early American houses that have no connection to the family. And then when they're sitting there in the breakfast scenes, there are frames behind them, but not of the family like you would have in a regular house. They're of fruit, but also of like food in the kitchen and like in the corridor, like, oh, a house, like almost kind of like giving you the sense that like this family is incredibly shallow and doesn't even like want representations of themselves. They just want representations of the things that make them think of where they are. We're in a house. We're in the kitchen. That's where food is. It just makes me think that Jesse is living in mediocrity. And I don't know.
I love
that
your like personal headcanon can work on that level and just see like, because I don't see that as the mediocrity of the characters. I see that as just the mediocrity of the production.
Of
just
course,
being like,
of course.
Here we go. We're gonna do that. One note that I had is just like that. We saw the house in 1984 because this is 5 years later. Whatever the redecoration was, it looks so ugly in there. Like it looks way worse than it. I don't think that it looked bad for 1984. What the interiors of that house looked like, it was acceptable. Like that's what houses would look like. But now it almost like felt like they went back in time more, because it's just like there's the ugly like yellow in the kitchen and there's like the green. There was like green walls or something. Just like the ugly carpeting. It was bad. It was awful. I don't know.
Placid and flaccid. That's what it is. But I will say, my favorite shot of the movie that I feel kind of encapsulates, I think, what the movie was, the story the movie was striving to tell, and what I think I kind of like think, oh, this is the movie. Sometimes there's a shot that is, or a scene that is just kind of like, this is the movie, and in a microcosmic way. And it's Jesse's reaction. It's not the coach's death, but it's after the coach is dead and Freddy is gone, and Jesse is there, and he lifts up the glove and he looks at it and he lets out that pealing, high-pitched scream. Yeah. That's the movie for me. Like, everything that happens in those few seconds, I'm just kind of like, this is the movie. And it makes me like it, because I'm like, if it all would have been this, like more tonally, like the high drama and the even the way the angle of the shot, I appreciate it. I find it visually interesting. I think ultimately the thing that I take away from the movie, like, and because how I feel about endings, our rankings of the Scream movies have brought this up many a time. Yeah. The reason why I kind of find the ending after the climax, but I mean like the epilogue, bearable, is I don't perceive, and I never did perceive, that Jesse is kind of all of his problems are kind of like solved by hooking up with this girl now. Yeah. I think I was really happy that like Lisa or Kim Myers, who plays Lisa, said in the Never Sleep Again documentary, Maybe I think that Jesse and Lisa do become the Will and Grace of the horror genre. And I'm like, I think so too. I like to think that like they went through all of it. They're tight, they're cool. There's a conversation on the horizon. They haven't quite had it yet, but they both know it's coming. Yeah. and if it didn't end exactly the way it did, and that, you know, in this kind of like interminable ride back into the desert where it's not really over, you know, maybe. And I wonder, do you think they survive this movie? Or do you think they go the way of Mark Thompson?
I mean, is anything ever mentioned of the, like, in 3?
He's never brought up.
But is anything like talked
never alluded to?
Yeah, is anything talked about of like the house, like what happened after Nancy moved out, or just like has there been other Freddy incidents in like the years following?
No, we witness everything. I will say with confidence, and if I'm wrong, I'm terribly sorry and ashamed, but I believe everything that happens from then on in the house we witness in real time in the franchise. So and he's never mentioned again. That's another thing that makes me sad, is that they never mention it. Like, you know, it happened once in 84 and then it happened again in 89. You know, because
I also liked the angle of it, of just sort of like it's almost like a haunting of like they moved into this house, and just for the fact that it was like Nancy's house, and it's just like that's where Freddy died, you know, the first time, or like, you know, the demon Freddy died the first time, that's where he's now trapped, and it's just like anyone who moves into that house who kind of like has any sort of like anxiety or affliction, that's who Freddy will kind of just glom onto, and, you know, become the demon haunting them. So I feel like there was like really good setups for like a lot of things that could have happened that would have been really cool in this movie, and it just like every single one of them just, again, it's just like, we got to get to the pool party. When are we gonna get to the pool party? Like, you know, all roads lead there, and that's all they could think about in the production, is like, we're gonna have this big scene, and that's gonna be it, and then we'll have like the follow up, like the aftermath of the factory. But
there's kind of one crucial thing that they didn't think of, and I feel like I want to ask you this question every time, at least in this franchise, that we cover a sequel.
Okay.
Do you have any theories at all about what brings Freddy back in this movie?
His revenge. His his need to get back at the children. It's stupid. I mean, like, that's it, because I mean, like, I know, I remember the dog peeing fire in 4 and all that.
No,
and
some of the ways they bring him back are absolutely ridiculous. Yes, I will cop to that.
But I mean, at the same time, like, the ending of 4, just because it is so ambiguous, that you could have very well just been like, you know, his spirit was trapped in this house, and that's why it's been empty for 5 years, and that's why this family like moved in, and that's how it happened.
Even if they would have given us something visual, like if you could have just like relit the furnace in the basement, like it could have been something as simple as that.
Well, I mean, I feel that, like, just even, I mean, I don't know the screen time counts for Freddy in each movie. I know that he wasn't in the first one a whole lot, but it felt for a sequel, for like the first sequel, we didn't get a lot of Freddy in this. I want to say, like, it's not until...
We definitely got more than in the first movie.
Well, I want to say it's not until like probably like 3 and 4, like the MTV era, where Freddy is just like, you know, he becomes like the star almost. But, and that's another thing, because I mean, like, even though there is that relationship between Freddy and Jesse here, it's just like, I don't get a sense of what it is, other than him just being like, you've got the body, and I've got the brain.
And I've got the brain.
And that's really all it is. It's so shallow. Whereas, like, at least in the first one, like, you know why he's going after Nancy. I mean, not even just like on a story level of the fact that she's the daughter of the Marge and Donald Thompson, but also just because of like what she represents and what Freddy represents. Whereas here, it's just sort of like it's bad screenwriting. It's just.
Yeah. Again, we'll bookend it with this. Heavily rushed, a director going through a mental breakdown, a mental and emotional breakdown, a young actor who's being torn in multiple directions. They even articulated in Scream Queen from Jack Shoulder. I think he was the one who said, like, you did not seem happy. You were, out of sorts, and that kind of thing. And I understand why. Again, there were bonuses, and I will still watch this movie. I was glad to watch it when I did, but that said, within my ranking, it's not near the top.
Well,
The components of what have me returning to a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, like that we covered in the first movie, and that we will cover in a lot of the sequels. It's just not at work in this one, which is endowing your hero or heroine or heroes with enough strength to at least fight back for a while, you know, and then creative detours, I mean, again, creative detours, things that don't feel like, well, let's just try this. Things that were like, oh, well, that's a concept I've never seen in a movie before. I appreciate that, memorable kills, things like that.
Yeah. Well, for the sake of, because we talk about a ranking, and obviously we're not going to do a full ranking now, but maybe this is something we'll do carrying on for every sequel, and not just this franchise, but other ones. So, I mean, this goes without saying, but current franchise ranking between the two movies.
1 and 2.
And I agree.
And for those of you listening, those of you listening, my hand was up high for 1 and it dropped a little for 2.
So worst 1, 2. And and we'll as we go through the movies, we'll continue that ranking system, including the other franchises. But that's a great time to get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we kill people on purpose.
Okay, we need to pick a cherry on top of this movie. I mean, I'm just gonna say Jesse, because I mean, I know you have your affinity for Lisa, and I don't think that she's a bad character in any sense. I love that she's like a dead ringer for Meryl Streep as well. I think it's been said.
It has.
But
I noticed it too. I was glad that they articulated it, because I always thought it when I watched the movie. I was like, she's so beautiful, like Meryl.
She just has like a very like classic beauty to her. But
and even that voice, the gentility in her voice, the way she articulates her lines and things. I'm like, oh. Yeah.
They could have done a Devil Wears Prada prequel with her.
I would still watch one. Oh my God. If she it's a crime that she has still not done a movie with Meryl Streep where she is somehow related to her. Because she is a good actress too. That's another thing. Like I started to say, like, it's to the movie's detriment that Mark Patton is as good and as earnest as he is, but it is not to the movie's detriment for my enjoyment that she is as good as she is, because she gets to be strong. She gets to fight back. She gets to
Kim Myers.
Yeah.
She was also in Hellraiser 4.
I have to watch that now.
I actually like that one, but that's another conversation for another day.
Okay.
But I think just the fact that like Jesse is sort of like the representative of this movie as well. And Mark Patton, that I think that it's only right that he is the cherry on top.
I agree.
Okay.
I want nothing but good things for Jesse. So yeah, I'd give it to him.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, the cherry picker. Last week, we asked you who deserves to die the most in Last Night in Soho. I nominated Jocasta.
Yes.
You nominated Jack. And based on votes from Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, we had 249 for Jocasta versus 710 for Jack.
Thanks, guys.
Read
we
some
did
of
it.
Let me read some of the comments here. Amethyst Frost. These are both great choices. Jack's wrongdoings were obviously a lot worse, and Sandy merely gave him what he had coming. He's such a villain that I love that the movie doesn't even really try to condemn Sandy for killing him. As much as I hoped one of you guys would nominate her because she's terrible, Jocasta as a villain was much more in the vein of soap opera messiness, and I probably would have loved to hate her if the entire movie was just girls being bitchy to each other in a fashion school. Love that you guys did an episode on Last Night in Soho because it made me watch the movie for the first time and I really enjoyed it. Well, thank you, Amethyst.
What have you done, Courtney? What have you done?
I'm glad that you liked it. Yeah, she's definitely... I just see like the bathroom scene where when she comes in, she'd be like, "Out, bitches!"
Yeah, right.
I was also, we didn't even mention it, but I was getting like Scream vibe, like the bathroom scene in the original Scream, because it's like Sydney hiding in the bathroom stall, and you had Eloise in there too, and they're just like, I think she made the whole thing up. Her mother didn't kill herself, or they may as well have said
Scream.
That. Yeah.
Maybe she's a slut, just like her mother.
Maybe she'll kill herself, just like her mother. Like
that. Right.
That was
pathetic. That would have been a note too high, but I still would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was too much camp for Last Night in Soho.
Too much for their own good. Yeah. But
they did. They did it perfectly the way they did.
Yes, they did.
Grant Dempsey, Jack, because of course he's worse, but also because I'd like to think that it would upset Jocasta to come in second place, even for the cherry picker. A fitting punishment for both.
That's great.
She came in second in fashion school and second in the cherry picker.
She's just applauding Jack at his win. Just like...
Great, you get to die,
Yeah, begrudgingly applauding his win. All right.
AJR voting Jack because sex trafficking. Jocasta deserved Rochelle's hair curse from The Craft. Whatever evil you do, it returns to you 3 times. Or it returns to you times 3. That would have been fun. Yeah. If this was a witch movie. Striffen 19. Sorry. Jack was the one who set Sandy on her path, so I'm pretty sure he's the one to go. Fourth, Gonzalez. I was just thinking about this the other day. I knew it was going to be between Jocasta and Jack. Zedward Gorey. A mean girl or a literal sex trafficker? What a dilemma. I mean, you can't just say, like, oh, she's just a mean girl. Like, she was fully, like, trying to push this poor girl
to destroy her.
I mean, like, this, like, bullying is not something that is just like you can just dismiss or or how do you say, just like, it's not a slap on the wrist punishment, because it's a serious fucking thing.
I've stood where you're standing, Zach. I understand completely.
Not to soften the crimes,
the sex trafficking.
But, I am Solomon. Damn it, good picks again. She was such a bitch, but he was so manipulative, and I hate that so much more. So Jack's getting the knife. JPW Campbell. I mean, it has to be Jack, if not for the obvious fact that he is human garbage, then at least for Matt Smith's performance. He somehow made me hate the character more than I otherwise would have. The role legit makes repeat viewings of Doctor Who or The Crown near impossible. Charlie Hamlin. Jack got his comeuppance. Jocasta went unscathed from her toxic bullying. So is that a point towards Jocasta?
It sounds like it.
Yeah. Sean P. It pains me to vote against my favorite Doctor, but sadly I must vote my conscience and pick Jack. It was a bit startling to see Matt Smith portray such a horrific monster, as he will always be the most likable and energetic Doctor ever. Jocasta was just the worst, and I've definitely met people like her. Wish she died like Jack. However, despite being incredibly annoying, her actions are not quite as egregious as Jack's. Right. I've never seen Doctor Who, by the way.
Me neither. I've been encouraged, and not even to start at the beginning because God, that's a lot of TV.
But that's how
these days.
Yeah, that's how I would do things because I'm a
Me too.
completionist. I need to see it from the beginning. I'll probably never watch it. I'll just say that. My chunky Geordie.
If I start, I'll get hooked in. I know, but sorry, go on.
My chunky Geordie. Not seen this, so voted Jack as he looks the creepiest and reminds me of my ex-husband. Do not vote in the cherry picker if you have not seen it.
You have every right to vote whatever. Vote your. All we say is vote your conscience, vote your heart, and if you go off of your impulse, this is for you or me, in favor of your choice or my choice.
So we're voting based on looks.
People who haven't seen the movie, what else do they have to go on? They go off a vibe.
Watch the movie,
like in
watch
life.
The movie.
But just like
the poll.
watch the
I was
movie,
gonna say the poll is up for a week. The poll's up for a week. Well,
but
less
if you don't
than a
have
week,
time to watch it before, because we don't know what your week is consisting of. So anyway, just feel free to vote, people. Just vote. That's what we should be telling people.
Here I am. I'm just like, there's certain ways that you got to do this, and you're just like, just let them do it. It's like good
I'm like, everybody
parent, bad
in.
Parent.
Because the more people who are in, the more people who get to participate in this. It's fun, and they could do it, and it could help you. I feel like they have sometimes. They've just been like, I don't know, but I chose Zach's because
I don't care. I'm just being controversial for the fuck of it.
Good.
Kirsty Campbell, both. But if I had to pick, horrible bully versus sex trafficker abuser, Jack it is. Bruno Salata, Jocasta? There's a question mark exclamation. Jocasta?
What? Okay, who would be
Pretty girl, let's hate on her.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Okay.
Now I'm seeing why you won, because none of these people actually saw the movie, and they're just like, I'm not gonna sacrifice that pretty girl.
No, I don't feel like that's the majority of what
I don't think a lot of people have seen Last Night in Soho, or as many as like our typical episodes.
Yeah, probably not. It hasn't been around as long.
It's a great movie. Go see it. But it also didn't.
Yeah, see the movie.
It didn't perform as well when it came out. But
well, the newer movies, we risk that sometimes. So
Blue Box 87. Jack is the bigger villain, of course, but Jocasta was a very basic bitch, mean girl, and those are the worst. An unusual name is not a personality trait.
That is hilarious.
Oh God, Parker Heisenberg. I can fix her.
Oh dear.
Thomas Baker, Jocasta, because she was annoying. Movie Maniac 03, very forgettable movie. I disagree, but I'll go Jocasta, mainly because Jack is Damon this is like a Game of Thrones thing, is it? Target. I don't fucking know. Someone please help me with the Game of Thrones names.
Yes, write it phonetically in his DMs.
Yeah, Targaryen. I fucking know. I never watched that. I don't watch it. I don't.
Daemon Targaryen? Is that what it is?
Targaryen.
Targaryen.
I haven't watched Doctor Who. I haven't watched. That sounds like a Game of Thrones thing.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I
don't know any of that shit. I'm sorry. But anyway,
I'm not.
there you have. Yeah, that your little dragon show. There you have it. So you get first dibs.
Wow. Okay. We didn't really talk about this character much. Actually, what's funny is this ended up being a kind of de facto Scream Queen discussion episode, as much as it was a part 2. But I mean, like, there's so many things in the movie that I feel like I've listened to podcasts discuss this movie, and they all kind of like discuss the same stuff. And I'm glad we actually didn't address a lot of the same things.
We just do whatever the fuck we want here.
Yeah, right.
And
but
we fight.
So one of the things,
or apparently I fight, and you just sort of.
I just push back.
Yeah.
But I answer in kind. But no. Or diffuse. I try to diffuse. You know, I'm an instrument of peace. But anyway. No, so my choice is Coach Schneider, and here's why. The man is in a position of power over youths, over minors, and already the sadism that I experience from him, that he has them like in direct sunlight, not even doing push-ups, it looks like they're just like suspending themselves out on the field for an indeterminate amount of time. That is not healthy, and it's not an adequate punishment. The guy gives me the creeps. I've seen the actor as himself, and the actor does not give me the creeps. So it's a good performance, but the guy, Coach Snyder, gives me the fucking creeps. I don't like the fact that, again, the only other perceivedly queer character who is actually identified as queer in the movie is not only sadistic but also strange. When he's in the bar and okay, let me tell you something I'm not doing. If I'm an instructor of teenagers and I go to a gay bar and I see one of my students there, number one, I don't confront them. Number two, I do not touch them. And then number three, I do not somehow like transport them to the school where in the middle of the night I have them run laps for some undetermined reason and then tell them to hit the showers while I just hang out in my office. What am I going to do when they're finished showering? And I don't want to know the answer to that question.
I feel like you're writing a Dr. Seuss limerick or something.
Well, we didn't get to talk about it, so I don't know what is in his mind. I remember the first time I saw it with my sister, I was watching it, we thought because there's this halo of like fluorescent orange light coming from one section of the wall while Jesse is doing laps, we were like, oh, he's dreaming. This isn't real. That's why it's so weird. Mm-hmm. No, he's not. It's all happening, I think. I don't know. Somebody, if you have an opinion, let me know. I'm on Instagram. We'll talk about
there's definitely like dream like atmosphere.
Yeah,
but that's what like the ambiguity of like what is a dream and what isn't in this movie is handled so much more poorly than it was it was expertly in the original, where it's just like, I don't know if this is a dream or not. Whereas this is like, it looks like it could be a dream, but it's definitely rooted in like everything that's happening.
There was a moment during the pool party I even actually thought maybe everybody at the pool party is dreaming and that's why this is all happening. Maybe, I don't know.
There was like a gas leak or something and they all just like
But okay, so my choice is Coach Snyder for all of the above.
I'm gonna go. I just think in the spirit of, like how I picked non-characters in Scream. I feel like I mean I don't want to like make a trend here because maybe I'll have a different opinion in Dream Warriors, but I'm just gonna go with like shitty parents because I think that Ken Walsh is the most deserving to die for reasons already expressed earlier on. But yeah, fuck that guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, vote your conscience, vote your heart, kids.
Yeah, and you can do that on Patreon if you are a supporter of mine. You can do that on Instagram. Follow us at the Cherry Picker Pod. And you can also do it on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe to us there. I do want to welcome some new Patreon supporters. So give it up for Austin Chase, Kim Lipucci, Puppy, Gary Blasick, Jamie Malu, and Austin Hall. Welcome.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Thank you for coming aboard. And if you are supporting on Patreon, so if that's my Patreon account, Zach Cherry, you do get to have early access to all of our Cherry Picker episodes. If you're supporting at the Freddy Krueger tier, funny enough that we're talking about Freddy Krueger, you will get access to the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is our bonus episode of the podcast. This month we're doing Scream Survivor 2.
Season 2.
Season 2, where we've taken 18 more characters from the Scream franchise and
Yes.
stranded them on an island in 2 separate tribes and set them loose on each other. So if you want to see what the fun dynamic of these characters when they're mixed up together and how that plays out and who emerges the sole survivor.
Yeah.
Because everyone loves a sole survivor. It's what the media really wants, baby. Tune into that. So to subscribe to Patreon to Zach Cherry. But Edward, where can they find you on social?
Well, you can find me at Edward is Truth on the platforms YouTube, Instagram, Letterboxd, and traditional spelling, and all one word. Edward is Truth. And what about you, Zach? Where can they find you?
Were you doing a Diana Rigg from Last Night in Soho? Because
I don't think she's quite so posh. Because this is my
you were just like spitting those off like there's a French bistro. Garlic smells all over. You can find me on Instagram, Retro Bitch Face, all one word. I'm on Twitter, ZachCherry8. My main YouTube channel, Zach Cherry, ZackCherry. Same with Patreon. There's links all over the place. Just look up and down.
Yeah, just look.
But there's all that. Also, I probably always forget, but we did mention him earlier. But thank you, Andre Felix, our editor, who you all have met in the Scream 6 episode, but he's going to be back. We do have something planned for him, but I won't reveal what we're talking about yet. But thank you, Andre. Otherwise, I think that's all that's on our agenda. What's happening next week? We already we alluded to it, so you don't have to waste any more time.
We're watching The Thing, the season 2, but not of the Scream Survivor, of the other thing that Don Mancini created about a doll, and not M. Thregan, because Don Mancini didn't create that. No, Don Mancini created Chucky, so it's gonna be Chucky season 2.
Hold on. Chucky. What's your name?
Knew it was coming. Knew it was coming.
You're gonna have to write up a synopsis for me because
okay, that's gonna be fun. Right. Ooh, that's gonna be fun. Okay.
Anyway, this has been a very long episode, so I appreciate everyone's patience if you've made it this far. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Which you can do both. Sorry, I didn't mention that, but yeah, you know the routine by now. We will be right back.